This symposium is on a poem titled Coming to the Morning. This poem was written by W.S. Merwin. W.S. Merwin is an American poet who was born in 1927. He grew up as the son of a Presbyterian pastor and started writing hymns for the church when he was 5. Even though his father was a pastor, he grew up in a violent household. During his early adulthood, Merwin traveled to Europe to study the art of Romantic language. While he was in Europe, he worked as a tutor and a translator. His poetry reflects what he learned during his time in Europe, as well as all of the emotions and scars from the violent home environment he had to grow up in. Since Merwin is the son of a pastor, God and religion is an important part of his life. He grew up in the church and lived the life of a preacher's kid. Since he was around religion 24/7, religion became one of the most important things in his life. In the poem, he mentions a supreme being, which is referring to God. In the poem, Merwin uses references to water, earth, air, and fire. These are also known to the ancient Greeks as the elements of nature. All of these are what the world and everything in it is made from. In Christianity, these are all parts of God's creation. Merwin is using God's creation to reference everything he lives in and around. Merwin referenced water 5 times in the poem, and this shows how water is more important to him than the other elements. Water is a fluid, which means it moves and conforms to the shape of the container it's in. Merwin is using this metaphor to express the hardships in his younger age. He was thrown around and had to accept the world he lived in. The other physical elements that Merwin either indirectly or directly used were the sun, mountains, and sky. These can be changed, in reference to the original elements, to fire, earth, and air. Because Merwin has such deep roots in religion, he is again referring to God's creation. This just shows how much God and his creation are important to him. Merwin uses imagery in his poems to give them a deeper meaning. According to secondary sources, Merwin uses vivid imagery to express his thoughts and feeling in his poems. The meaning of Merwin's poems are greatly increased by his imagery. Giving a poem more meaning both literally and metaphorically can be very helpful in getting the meaning across. Merwin also uses the description of a human body in his poem. He references to blood, eyes, tongue, and ears. Using these references, Merwin is trying to express that a new body has formed. He also mentions sensory words such as listen, touch, and look, which are things that a newborn will begin to do. This is showing the reader that Merwin was being rebirthed or seeing the world in a new way. Using these details, one can infer that Merwin is trying to express that he was going through a time that he was in deep mental change. He can be rethinking the life that he was living and trying to fix it. He found that he was living a life that he wanted to change, so he expressed how to fix what he was doing. Since he is going through a deep mental change, the reader can look at this as Merwin is going through an awakening event in his life. He is looking around at everything in his life and reevaluating what his priorities are and the things he needs to get rid of. Many people go through this in life, but what they call this phenomenon is a midlife crisis. What Merwin is experiencing is a conviction to come back to the religion that he once grew up in. People also call the midlife crisis a conviction from God to be reawakened. When people are convicted, they either can choose to go toward the religion or keep their current lifestyle. Merwin wrote this poem about his time during this conviction. Being reborn or born again can mean a couple of things. One meaning is that Merwin is undergoing a self-evaluation and rethinking his entire life. The other possible meaning is tied to the religious aspect. Being born again in the Christian faith is a big step in one's walk with God. After being born again, said person is now entitled to a place in paradise as long as they stay true to the faith. The title of the poem further proves this to be valid. Coming to the morning is showing a journey from night to day or dark to light. This is once again showing that Merwin is coming out of the dark and into the light. In religious terms, this can show that Merwin was in sin or darkness, and he is being born again and coming into holiness or the light. Using the religious aspect of being born again gives the poem a meaning that is entirely based on religion. Dedicating an entire poem to religion would not be an uncommon thing to expect. Merwin writes to express what he is feeling. If Merwin is feeling a strong sense of religious conviction when writing this, it would make sense that the poem is based entirely on religion. At the end of the day, Merwin is just a normal human being who uses different ways to express his feelings. He used his artistic language abilities to express a time during his life that some people would argue is one of the hardest times to get through. He was feeling a hardship, so he used one of his ways of expressing his feelings and created this poem.